Welcome to Recogs. We're the inventory success podcast where we discuss how the top operators source, manufacture, finance, and distribute their inventory in order to create successful businesses. I'm your host, Mike Gelb. I'm the community manager here at MFD. MFD is the inventory success platform for consumer and B2B companies. When we say inventory success, we mean that we help SMBs manufacture, finance, and distribute their products across 20 categories. And if you're looking for help to reduce your COGS, or you're looking for inventory financing or selling on new channels, we're happy to see if we can help at manufactured.com. Now, I know this is a free podcast, but that doesn't mean we don't have a favor. If you're enjoying the show, if you can please subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss when the next episode is, that'd be great. And if you can also leave us a review on the Apple Podcast app, that would really mean a lot. We not only produce content that we hope is helpful and educational for SMBs, but we also throw events that help foster community in the world of consumer. So to subscribe and be in the know when we're next throwing an event, click in the show notes. It's manufactured.com/events. Now our guest today is Sarah Nelson, who is the founder of Nooish. Nooish is a newish take on modern Jewish CPG food, starting with her instant matzo ball soup, which has never been done before. We discuss the complexities of creating a shelf-stable matzo ball soup, the R&D process that took a year and a half for her to get right, her process for building her brand, her taking on the category. She's been in the CPG space for 10 years, so also really understanding some of the mistakes other companies have made to try to avoid them when expanding to retail or even on the launch strategy, and as well as what she thinks are other opportunities for other product lines for Nooish. This is a really fascinating conversation. Really enjoyed it. Without further ado, here's Sarah. Sarah, thanks so much for hopping on the podcast and coming on the show. I'm so excited to talk to you about Nooish and everything. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be seeing you again and being on your podcast.
Yeah, it was so great seeing you at Newtopia Now, catching up with you. Also trying the product. So good. Highly recommend everyone check it out if it's and buy on D2C. And of course, obviously, if it's in retail, if it's closer to retail store for them, they should definitely buy it there because it's such a great product. I really do love it. So I know that you've worked in CPG for quite a while, and you've consulted with brands. You've also been like the program manager for Chobani's program as well. What was like the inspiration to actually venture out and start your own brand?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things kind of had to coalesce, but I've been really lucky in that I had so many different parts of this business, whether it was working with the Chobani incubator and really helping other brands rise to the occasion using all of their resources, or being a category manager at National Co-op Grocers on the retail side, as well as then kind of running my own consulting. So I was helping small women and minority-owned brands get to the next level as well and kind of navigate this whole industry that is so complicated. And honestly, I said I would never do it. I was like, I see what these founders go through, and it's hard. But sometimes inspiration strikes, passion strikes. You invent a product that doesn't exist in the market, and you either say someone else will come out with it and I'll regret that I didn't come out with it, or it will never come out and I'll regret that it's never out. So I pretty much had to do it, and super, super happy I did. But yeah, like you mentioned, my background is in consumer packaged goods. It is also within the Jewish culinary world. So more on a lay leader basis, I've been the producer on the Great Big Jewish Food Fest. I went on an amazing Israel trip with a bunch of food industry leaders, and have been a part of that community, as well as I'm the culinary coordinator for a high-end Jewish food retreat where we bring in all the top chefs to come and do workshops and demos and everything for a whole weekend. So it really melded all of my passions, and when people find out that I'm doing this, they're like, yeah, I can't imagine anyone else being that person. So yeah, I had to do it. I think I also was the fractional GM for a brand. That's what really broke my imposter syndrome, really being able to not only work on like the marketing and the sales side and the retail side, but actually having to work with a co-man, work in the operations, work in the logistics, and just learn as I go. And then I was like, okay, I can figure this all out. I know how to do everything. So once I had that experience, I think it really took a lot of that barrier and a lot of that fear that I had. And if I had the right product, would I be able to do it?
So toss me a little bit, and that's I can't even imagine like how all that experience, especially I'd imagine on the actual product side and product development side and logistics side, how that probably has been super helpful in terms of launching Newish. But would love to learn too why, like, how did you find this opportunity as well, like with instant matzo ball soup, and why is this something that's never been done before or maybe paid attention to from others, and why as well, because I'd imagine that you do want to build a portfolio of other foods that are very very well known in Jewish culture, or really attached to Jewish culture, if that's fair to say. But why start with matzo ball soup, and also where did like inspiration strike?
Yeah. So inspiration for the brand really struck from being part of so much programming where we were starting to really develop a lot more diverse stories that normally aren't seen within the Jewish world. There's Jews of color, there's Jews from the Middle East, from North Africa, from, all over. And I think a lot of people see the stereotypes that are, in movies or films or, wherever what they think Jewish culture is. And really, this group of people has never really felt represented, seen, included. And the more that the programming has been happening, the more I really felt a need to kind of showcase that. You have Siete and Maya Kamal and Fly by Jing and Dozen Cousins, and they're all elevating their own culture's food. So why not mine? And then in terms of the decision for matzo ball soup, that really was a very like supply chain and operations kind of decision in some ways. It by no means is it an easy thing to do, but I really thought, being the frozen category manager at National Co-op Grocers, I said never do frozen or refrigerated from a supply chain perspective. Um, I wanted it to be lightweight, long shelf life, shelf stable. And then I just also wanted something that, from a consumer perspective, really had mass appeal, and that's something that people, whether they were Jewish or not, would have known. So matzo ball soup is very Americana. You can get it at any corner deli, whether you're in New York or LA or elsewhere. And that really kind of struck me. And, there's so many things that are holiday items. Obviously, people eat matzo ball soup on certain holidays, especially Rosh Hashanah is coming up, as well as Passover. But it really is something that people love all year round. I would really kind of connect it very similarly to tamales in Mexican culture. Traditionally tamales are made on Christmas because there are such a pain in the ass to make. You got to get that your whole family together, you get the assembly line, but people love tamales all year round, and people love eating tamales whether you're Mexican or not. So that's how I equate matzo ball soup, is that I think that it really expands beyond Jewish in terms of cultural zeitgeist. And then it was really figuring out, how do I make matzo ball soup shelf stable. And instant soup is really, I think you can see I'm eating like an heat and eat rice right now as my lunch. I love like clean ingredient, elevated instant food. I love to cook when I'm hosting a Shabbat dinner or having people over, but when I'm just by myself, like I just want something quick and easy, and I probably eat ramen multiple times a week. And matzo ball soup takes like over an hour to make, and you literally, unless you are a family of six, are not going to be making a whole box of matzo ball soup anytime soon. So I really said, how's this product that like people would love to eat all the time, but is so hard to get? How do I do that?
No, that makes sense. Like as you said, like matzo ball, if you were to make it at home or have it at home, really hard to, not hard to make, but just takes a long time, right? Takes an hour and a half to make, and you're probably not going to be doing that all the time, right? Even if you do love it, it's just a long time to actually make to make a soup. And yeah, I mean, whenever I think of matzo ball, I think deli 100%. I think I'm going to the deli, getting a matzo ball soup, coming home and munching on that because it's absolutely delicious. And also I appreciate you saying, and let's like expand on this a bit more on the supply chain side. You want a shelf stable product or launch this a shelf stable product that also was lasting for a long time. Can you talk to me a little bit about the complexities of even though it's shelf stable, checks that box. It's not in the frozen, not frozen. Having a frozen supply chain. We had on David Greenfeld from Dream Pops, for example, and yeah, sounds like frozen just sounds very complex in its own way with having a frozen supply chain and dealing with that, and especially with like the freezer section being also an extremely competitive space in the grocery store, just because there's limited amounts of freezer space too. So you also have to battling that with that as well. Talk to me though a bit about what was complex though about matzo balls. And I know it's the instant matzo ball soup. I know obviously shelf stable as we said, and also can last for a long time. But what were some of the challenges that you found when actually making the product?
Yeah, so I R&D'd for a year and a half, a lot of it myself, and then and through a lot of iterations, there were a lot of people trying it, and then I was really lucky to get introduced to the American Egg Board. They have an egg accelerator, so if you're doing something innovative with eggs, they will give you access to resources to help you really kind of get that last mile of developing your product. So they hooked me up with Culinex. They've been really super helpful in getting me to that last step, whether it's with my broth or my balls. And I also hired this amazing chef. He helped open Ride Deli here in Chicago, no longer open, but he really knew matzo balls as well. So he was able to really, and that was only a month ago. He's gotten my efficiencies incredibly down. So that was just an amazing find, knowing that I'm not a food scientist. I was super scrappy and I did all my own bartering in order to get, services and advice and all of that being in this industry. But I think being able to finally admit like what you don't know, you can only get so far, and then like you do need help. And so but yeah, it's a freeze dried product. It's freeze dried is very cool. It keeps the texture, the taste, the nutrients. But it's not something no one's ever really freeze dried a matzo ball before. So, and then had it rehydrate in a really lovely, fluffy, airy way. So yeah, getting that down, what was the right size, what was the right ratio of all the ingredients and the recipes, that's something that I think probably the first time you tried it was Newtopia maybe, but if you ask a lot of our friends in the industry, they tried it at the first one right off the right off the freeze dryer. My first freeze dryer was at Expo West 2023, and then I would say basically every other trade show we've gone to, I've handed people different iterations of where I'm at, and it's fun to see people be like, oh wait, you did this and now you changed that, and what about this, and like it's so much better. And so I really listened to a lot of feedback. I don't think I did it in a vacuum. And then actually I think the broth was the hardest part, because people expect so much out of a broth, and it was very important to me to have very clean ingredients. So many of these broths are filled with fillers and salts and all of that. So I wanted something that wasn't overly sodium heavy, but had a really lovely complex flavor. So I'm partnering with Burlap and Barrel and Real Salt in order to make the broth and give people like a really elevated experience.
Can you define through these innovations what better tasted like in terms of I'd imagine with like the flavor profile, what actually kind of from your mind changed from what those first innovations, those first runs of what it tastes like compared to now, and maybe what was the hardest part in terms of that you actually wanted it to taste like a particular taste that you're able to finally get to.
Yeah, I think some of it was just in the inconsistency. Like a lot of times I would get some that would hydrate really well, and some that just given the right, would need the right environment in order to hydrate properly. And then sometimes I'd be like, oh, this is enough time for it to rehydrate. I'd cut into it and it would be a little crunchy in the inside still, or it'd have more of a rubbery taste. I really wanted something that was melt in your mouth. And sometimes I would think I had it and then sometimes I didn't. And so like I think finding that consistency now where I feel like every ball that I put in a cup, I feel really great about, was a big deal. And then, yeah, some of it was just because you're going through multiple processes. I am, making the ball, boiling the ball, freeze drying the ball, and then you're now at home rehydrating the ball. And there's multiple options. I recommend the microwave. It's the fastest. It also like kind of creates that steaming environment that's going to create just a better experience. But like if you don't have a microwave or you're camping or you're, in your college dorm room or whatever, hot water works just fine. It just takes a little bit of a longer time. And so I really extended it to like the time of like if you had, if you didn't do it properly, that you'd still have a good experience. It's like hot water 10 minutes. Well, it might be done after 5, it might be done after 8, but like I want to make sure that you have the best experience possible. So I've, kind of allowed for that little like margin of error so that people can, you know, eat the product in the way it's meant to be enjoyed.
From the consistency side, how did you also think about, manufacturing these more so at scale or quicker? Because of course, I know you started out in your kitchen doing it yourself. How did you were able to kind of find like the right manufacturer that was able to produce it exactly how you wanted it, that the consistency was correct, that it was also as well with the broth kind of flavor and everything?
Yeah, I am the manufacturer.
Oh
That's
wow, amazing.
Yeah. So I'm self-manufacturing this product. Like I said, I did find somebody after a month and a half. I think you forget that when you go from I shouldn't have forgotten this. I know enough not to forget this, but when you go from your home kitchen to a much larger scale situation where you're going from 20 balls to 250 balls at a time, that there's some dialing in terms of the temperature, that you put it in, that you take it out, how long. So I think for me, I am not a variable person. I have ADHD and I'm very impatient. So, I think that scaling process was very difficult for me because, again, like I said, sometimes I was getting an amazing batch and sometimes I wasn't. And then it was really bringing in this chef who, even I said certain things. I was like, oh, it doesn't work to do XYZ. Like, I've already tried it. Don't even bother. And he was like, just leave me alone. Let me figure this out. And I didn't really say that, but like, that's what happened. And within a week, I like literally, I was at Newtopia while he was doing this. And within a week, he had figured out all the things that I said, oh, that doesn't work. He figured out how to make it work. And he got my efficiencies down 75%. So, and labor is my biggest cost. So that's like huge. So that's been awesome. Like that's what's created that consistency. But Culinex, who I spoke about, they're still doing a co-man search for me. I'm still constantly talking to people. It's a two-part process. It's the making the balls and boiling them, and then it's the freeze drying them, as well as like packaging and everything else. So it's really not something, when you invent a product, it's hard to find the right co-man, that can really do everything that you need. Otherwise, people would already be doing this. So I think for me, it's figuring out who those right partners are. And then with the supply chain issues of having to get something from one place to another, is it cost effective? I've tested machinery at scale. I know that these balls can absolutely be scaled from a manufacturing process. It really is just finding the right partner and also having, I'm pre-launch. I'm launching basically next week, soft launch, and then like full launch in October during the Jewish holidays. So I'm still kind of understanding my demand. Um, uh, and I think that hopefully Comanza will also be much more willing to have the conversation once I, can have that demand. But having Culinex, having this chef, I'm creating the right SOPs where going to a co-man should be a hopefully very easy transition now that I have had the time in my own kitchen to learn so much.
In terms of your manufacturing it, are you actually going out and actually building the matzo balls yourself, or are you also hiring people to actually do the actual process itself?
The chefs, they're making the matzo balls. Everything's being done in my kitchen. The matzo balls, the and the freeze drying, and then I do outsource the broth pouching, the blending and pouching. So I, developed the broth recipe with my friend Jonathan at Drexel. He's the head of the food department there.
At Drexel University?
Yeah, Jonathan Deutsch. Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's where I went to undergrad.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. So he's great. He actually wrote a book on like Jewish food history and
That's
um
awesome.
yeah, we've been friends for a while. He's really big on food waste and upcycling, which has been in my previous life. I've done a lot of stuff with. So yeah, he got me a good base recipe, and then I've been iterating it since, whether it was me iterating it or Culinex. And like I said, from a R&D standpoint, I think that's the hardest. Also because like I can eat a lot of matzo balls, but like you only want to eat so much sodium a day, and sometimes your palate starts getting killed. And so I was really leaning on friends to come over and saying, "Hey, like I need to figure out which I mean, there's a million and one yeast extracts, so it's kind of overwhelming to figure out like, okay, which one is gonna make my thing taste more like this, more like that." Like initially, I went with it was initially developed with nutritional yeast, and I the flavor was delicious. I still have some in my closet because I'm still doing like the 12-month shelf life testing. So those are the ones that I initially, sealed and are opening once a month. But it left like a sediment on the bottom that I don't think was great for user experience. And then I switched to another yeast extract, and I was getting a lot of feedback that it felt more ramen-y to people than like chicken noodly to people.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to find something because it's a vegan broth. The whole product is vegetarian because it has egg in it. Obviously, hard, very very difficult to make a matzo ball without egg. But I really wanted the broth to be parav, which means no dairy, no meat. Then, if you are kosher, you could eat it with any meal. If you are vegetarian, you can now enjoy matzo ball soup, or maybe you haven't been able to for a really long time. Um, but I'm not a big chicken eater, so I didn't want it to taste too. That's personal preference, but like I didn't want it to
Right.
feel too gamey, meaty. So I really think I found a really good middle ground where it's not too ramen or veggie, and it's not too chickeny, but I mean, you tried it. You can tell me what you thought.
I thought it was great. I thought it was great. And I think that as well, if you do like chicken, for example, you can also add it to, chicken or, other things as well. So it's kind of like a neutral as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So the cup too. I mean, that from like a really interesting supply chain, logistics thing is my cup is a 20-ounce cup. I'm working with a company called Viston in Las Vegas. I really like working with them because they're local. I mean, a lot of people during the pandemic had so many issues with getting their packaging and everything, because they weren't working with a group in the U.S. And they've been great. It's like a really quick turnaround. It's done. It ships to me, and I have it. And they have pretty low minimums. Um, it is like slightly, bigger than I think what it it needs to be. Now that there's a third ball, and I can talk about that. Like I actually think it's a really good size. But on the side, it says add your toppings here. So I want people to know that like there's enough room in here where it's not like, oh, I don't feel like I'm getting enough soup. You're getting a full bowl of soup. If you were to like pour this in a regular soup bowl, you'd realize that it's a full bowl. But it also gives you that extra room to add your own tradition. And that's part of my brand. My brand is really like sharing their own traditions, their own, diversity of culture within the base of matzo ball soup. So being able to add your own chicken, your own salt, your own celery, whatever you want to do, is super fun. Your own noodles if you want.
I'm curious as well in terms of how many matzo balls as well in the actual product itself. I know that you said you went from like 2 to 3. Can you talk a little bit about your thought process in terms of as well as how big the product is, maybe how full you get from it, or just how you were thinking about size overall when it came to it.
Yeah. So Matzo ball soup is traditionally like an appetizer, I would say. It kind of fits somewhere in between a snack and a meal. Mine is right now it's 180 calories. It's 5 grams of protein. Um, the comments that I get from a lot of people are they feel very satisfied, very satiated. I feel like if I have it, I usually have it and then maybe have a salad as well. Like it's a great soup and salad pairing, which is something people are very used to. Um, and I think probably similar how if you had an instant ramen, the 2 balls to 3, that was like a real, at first the 2 balls was a cost decision. So they used to be slightly bigger, or it was 2 balls. And it felt like, okay, obviously if you go to deli, they're bigger balls. But even if I'm home and it's Passover, I feel like my mom's scooping out 2 balls, usually not 3. Um, and so I put out surveys and comments, and all my friends were like, "This is so good. I need a third ball. Like, I want more. I just like it's not enough." Um, I think the 2 balls too. It again, labor is my biggest cost. The balls are my biggest cost. So adding that third ball is a margin hit for me. But I think it's what's going to bring the customer back again and again and again and recommend it to their friends and want to feel like they're sending it, at a cost that might be higher than a cup of noodle to a friend, to a loved one, and they feel like they're sending something that really is substantial. So that was a big part of, that decision as well. Also, groups of 3 look great in photography.
I'm curious too how you think about pricing as well, and pricing each product, when it comes to the kind of the product category as well. How you see your instant matzo ball soup, because of course there are a lot of other instant offerings. I know that you mentioned cup of noodle soup. Obviously, there's ramen. There's a number. I guess that it actually is a noodle soup. There's a number of different products that are kind of in the instant space. What was your approach with matzo ball in terms of what the actual retail price should be?
Yeah, to be honest, something I'm still struggling with. And I think as it's out in the market, I'm going to really learn from. And as I'm building more efficiencies, I'm going to have a little bit more room for. But, it's for D2C is really my go to market strategy with some specialty retail, as well as things like Hillels, college Hillels, universities, that kind of thing. So it's about $6.99 for retail is kind of like the sweet spot. Um, my website right now, I have my
It's
initial.
10, right?
It's yeah, so it's 4 for 40, but that includes shipping. So if I were to have it at $7 and add the shipping, you'd be paying the same price. So I think that's like consumer psychology is like what I'd probably have to A/B test that what works best. Um, I think also, I mean, it depends on what the use case is. So if you're ordering from spoonfulofcomfort.com, Goldbelly, Zabar, Zingerman's, it's $150 for 2 quarts of frozen soup. And when I tell people this, they're either like, "Oh my god, that's crazy," or they go, "Oh yeah, I've done it," or "I've been sent it and it wasn't very good." They kind of felt like it was a waste, but they felt like matzo ball soup is a love language. If my friend or family member is sick, they just had a baby, a loved one passed away, they're celebrating something, that's our love language. So, to be able to create a gifting option that is so much cheaper and I think so much better quality and is really fun. It feels more representative to a younger audience. It is a nice thing that like if you get perishable soup, you have to eat it right away. It might be like, oh, I'm sitting Shiva and a loved one died and now I'm being inundated with meals and it's so nice, but it's nice to have a pantry item that like once you get through the kugel and the lasagna, then like you can bring this out later. So I think I'm solving a lot of issues there. I mean, college Hillels, universities, they already have programs where parents can actually send their kids matzo ball soup. And whether they're going through finals or they're not feeling well or they're not coming home for the holidays. And Hillels are like, it's such a pain in the ass on a supply chain level for us. We either have to get students to come in, into our kosher kitchen and volunteer to make the soup and then deliver it, or we have to go find a kosher caterer and then we're like sitting and delivering hot soup. The same issue, the kid has to eat it kind of right there and then. So they're like, you're totally solving a big issue for us there. So people who know how hard it is to make matzo ball soup, how comforting it is, if you know, and like you're like that price point totally makes sense. I understand the labor, I understand the time savings, and I understand the need. If you're a mass market, which I want to hit, and you're not really that familiar with matzo ball soup, or you just do want to keep this as a daily lunch thing, which I ultimately want to get to, then it's a little bit difficult. I mean, I walked into a store yesterday. I saw Foxtrot was the same. It was or not. I walked into Foxtrot. I probably shouldn't say that on the air, but got that. I went into a retailer, and it was $6.99. Emmy was $6.99, and I buy Emmy. Like, Emmy solves the problem for me. I like ramen. I want something that feels a little bit more wholesome and healthy, and I like the taste, and I think people get it. So I'm getting some pushback from people because, yeah, $40 for any grocery item online, feels like a lot, especially when they haven't tried it yet. They want to try it. I think the people who have tried it and can't wait to get more, or can't wait that like their picky kids are eating it and they have something exciting to give them, um, get it and they want to buy more.
Yeah, no, totally. Do you I mean, what do you think is interesting is I'm just thinking about it as relation to, like a chicken noodle soup, where chicken noodle soup is very comfort food as well, especially when, one is sick. Chicken noodle soup, it's, correct me if I'm wrong, not nearly as challenging to make as from scratch than a matzo ball soup, right? A matzo ball soup is a lot more intensive and what have you. You can, make it from scratch. I'm not saying that it's easy to make chicken noodle soup from scratch, but you make the chicken, you make the soup, and you obviously make the broth or whichever vegetables that you want as well in the broth. It's not as, you're not actually creating a matzo ball, which is, quite complex. And yet, a lot of obviously, I think that on sick days and what have you, people have, chicken noodle soup lying around that are, the freeze dry chicken noodle soup. And so it is quite interesting that, you, for the matzo ball soup, it's a lot harder to make that from scratch, so there's even, I could definitely see like the opportunity there that actually, where you'd actually want, a matzo ball soup, but you actually don't really want to make it, where it's much easier to make a chicken noodle soup, but you're still buying that. Well, you might be still buying that already pre-made.
Yeah, exactly. And I also, if you are doing it, because I don't want to be stuck in a niche of people who are sick of being Jewish penicillin, but I think that like a lot of the comments that I get from, I've been, like I said, for the last year and a half giving samples to friends, and I'm always like immediately like, "Hey, what did you think of the soup?" Thinking like, "I gave you something new and innovative. Don't you want to try it right away?" And a lot of times they'll put it in their pantry and I will get a text 2 months later, "Hey, I got COVID, or I was really sick. I got a cold for my kids." And like, I am so happy that this was the thing that was in my pantry right now. Like, when you're sick, you don't want to make chicken noodle soup. You don't want to make matzo ball soup, but I think matzo ball soup has a more visceral nostalgia and comfort. I mean, every culture has a soup and dumplings, and I think I was just talking to a friend's husband today. She was trying the soup. She had her husband try a bite, and he immediately was like, my grandma. Like the smell just brought him back, and those are the comments I'm getting. Those people are saying, thank you for bringing me back to this place. Like, the world's kind of going to shit right now, whether it's anything that's going on in the world. And being able to have that moment for yourself, that moment of comfort, that moment of like nostalgia and a simpler time, I think really resonates with a lot of people.
On the go-to-market strategy, I know it's predominantly, D2C right now, and as well as gifting opportunity there when it comes to gifting. What do you, I mean, what as well? How do you think about? I know that you're right now in specialty, some retail outlets, or going to be in some retail outlets. How do you? What do you think? At what point do you think that you're going to really maybe focus on retail? Does D2C have to be at a certain point in time for you to uh, really channel on the retail side, or how are you thinking about it in just overall like channel strategy?
Yeah, I think having, again, like I said, not launched and knowing what the demand is going to be. I mean, people are like, oh, you go on TikTok shop, this thing, you get the right affiliates, and this thing's going to totally hit and be viral. So, crossing my fingers for that. But, um, I think that I've already had retailers are very interested. I mean, when there's so little innovation in our industry, and so having something that is so new, so on trend, whether it's grab and go, whether it's global, people who are globally curious, whether it's freeze dried, these are all huge, huge trends. And so I'm already getting retailer interest. When I went to Newtopia and I talked to certain retailers, they were like literally, I gave it to one who was like, "Oh my god!" And that's the kind of response that I get from almost everyone. Like, "This is genius. Why doesn't it exist?" Um, it's for me. I think that whether it's D2C or these interesting omni-channel opportunities like a Hillel, like a JCC, a synagogue, a summer camp, old age home. I mean, I think that there's interesting pieces to seeing how far that can get me and what their budget is for something like this. Because I think there's opportunities for airlines or airports or it's one of those omni-channel things that can really be eaten anywhere. And I had a retailer at Newtopia say, "I'd love to bring you for an in and out table display for Hanukkah." Well, that's amazing. Like, if I can direct ship a pallet to you and I don't have to worry about distribution, it's an in and out, like all of that, promos, yada yada, I can do that. Like, and that's kind of, I'm in this unique situation of having 4 holidays during the year where, they're always looking for new Jewish items. Now, I don't want to be in the kosher set year round. I think I will live and die in that set, but I really want to be next to soup, next to ramen.
Right, right, right.
I consider it like minestrone soup. You're not putting that in the pasta section, you're putting it in the soup section. Um, so, in that way, I think I'm open to having the conversations, and I think so. I'm not saying no retails, 3 years from now. But I know that at my margins currently, I've seen the mistakes other brands have made of going too fast, too you know too quickly, and it has only been super detrimental. There's millions of people in this world. They all live online. Like, I think that meeting people where they're at is important, and retail is some of that. But I think there are so many other places that they are at for this brand, not being frozen. I'm not stuck to where is there a freezer. I'm not a heavy soda. I'm not stuck to, not being able to ship. So, I think I have a lot of that going for me, luckily.
No, totally, totally. And I also think sometimes what what can get stuck with brands too is maybe it's a product that's really well positioned, for example, for the natural channel and in price for the natural channel, and then trying to go, to conventional grocery, for example, it becomes maybe really challenging to actually compete on price because of, and you kind of fixated your margin structure based off of, the retail price that you were getting. And or I guess what you were selling at wholesale to, a natural retailer versus a conventional retailer. And I'm just kind of curious. I know that retail is maybe not like top of mind right now in terms of going into it, but do you also think as well with this product, like how can we make sure that this product can be fairly flexible when it comes to being, in conventional, in natural, being even maybe, convenience, for example, or different channels as well, and kind of think about your margin structure from that lens?
Yeah, so I mean, once if I find the right co-man partner and it makes sense, then I can get the price down. That's kind of really where it's at. Obviously with scale, I can get some of I can probably get the cup down at least another 10 cents. There's definitely efficiencies to be had in this process. I'm doing, I'll say being in this industry, like I'm doing a lot of direct sourcing. So I feel like I'm probably not going to get a lot of my ingredients down significantly with, larger ordering. or anything like that. It's not like I'm going to Restaurant Depot or Cisco. I am going directly to the sources for these things, and I am self, um, purchasing and all of that. So, which I've been really lucky to be able to do. Um, but yes, I think like that's the goal. And also, this is not my only product line. I'm gonna have this is the product that is at this price point and has these complexities, but I have a whole host of other innovative ideas that I would love to come out with that can go straight to a co-man, that can are great add-ons. I think when you come out with a brand, if you want the splash, if you want it to be talked about, if you want to make a difference, like you got to come out with the thing that's the most innovative. Um, and then if it's something that is still I'm an out of the box thinker. I don't think I'd ever come out with anything that's that's basic bitch. But if it's something that's a little bit more obvious or something like that, then I think once I built the brand and the excitement, then these will only be add-ons.
Totally. What at what point, and I know this is hard to say right now, but because you are going to build multiple different product lines and have this be, a family of brands of different products under Newish. When do you think it makes sense for you to launch another product? Because I do feel like this is sometimes what can happen. Easy for me to say because I've never built a brand, but that maybe you've actually launched like a second product too soon before the first product. So how do you think about in terms of launching new products as well for Newish?
So I mean, being a D2C brand right now and self-manufacturing, you have a little bit more flexibility to like maybe test something out and see, does this work, does this not? The plan to start is to extend the line. Like I said, I want to tell those diverse diasporic stories, and people do use matzo ball soup as a base for their intersectionality. 28% of Jews in America are multicultural. It's probably a low number. So you see Shalom Japan making an uh, miso ramen matzo ball soup, which is a restaurant in Brooklyn. You see Fanny Gerson making a Mexican tortilla matzo ball soup. Molly Ye making a lemongrass Chinese matzo ball soup. So people are already doing these versions of matzo ball soup because they know how comforting it is, and they want to share part of the mix of their cultures. So I think that is the next stage. One of the big things I learned at Chobani was not to go niche on niche. So I think creating a familiar product but in an unfamiliar format was something that I wanted to get out there and not confuse people. I think what's been really nice about the branding and the format and everything is that I have found that it really relates to all ages. I found toddlers love it. My friends my age love it. My grandma, who doesn't really like much, loves it. All different kind of age groups I see are really coming to this. So I didn't want to come out with like the spicy ramen flavor, on day one and then really alienate a piece of the audience. But then I think it'll be really fun to come out with those. So from a timeline perspective, I mean, gluten free is a really big one that people are asking about. That's a huge piece of the audience, especially a lot of Jews have celiac. And I would love to come out with like a gluten-free Mexican, like a Tex-Mex cornmeal one. Maybe partner with someone like Hacienda or something like that, where I'm really using these wonderful high-end ingredients from Friends Brands. So that's something that like I could see that being in the pipeline sooner rather than later. But I want it to be the right partnership. I want it to be the right formulation. Like I said, it took so long for me to even get the broth right on this one. Hopefully now that I have more resources and people behind me and excited and a little bit more money to hopefully spend in the future, that process will go a little bit faster. But I think that being able to do that, and then I also think like my whole thing is really elevating Jewish brands in general, whether you're a Jewish cultural item or you're just a Jewish owned founder. Um, and to be able to partner with brands and that, on a product that where they might be like, oh, we wouldn't normally do a product that has like a Jewish leaning flavor because that's just a niche audience. And now I have a bigger audience and a bigger platform to help them really get that out there. Is a really cool opportunity to do some exclusive partnerships.
No, totally. And also thanks for kind of giving a map in terms of different opportunities as well that you're seeing and exploring within, how do we utilize matzo ball and also, bring in as well and kind of cross different cultures too. I think that's really, really cool. My final question for you is, what would you value more? $100 of COGS, $100 of your inventory, like your inventory cost, not the retail value of it, but the inventory, or $100 cash.
Right now, because I need more help on the marketing side and all of that, absolutely $100.
Cool. Awesome. Sarah, this has been awesome. I really enjoyed chatting with you. I know we went way over, but I appreciate you bearing with me and for chatting with me. This has been so much fun.
Thank you.
And there you have it. It was a pleasure chatting with Sarah. Sarah, thanks again so much for coming on our podcast, Recogs. Again, Recogs is brought to you by MFD. MFD is an operations and finance partner for brands. We help brands with inventory financing and helping them scale. We also see if we can help reduce COGS and get unit economics right. Check out more at manufacturer.com. Make sure you also sign up for our events that bring together the consumer brand space and the emerging consumer brand space at manufacturer.com/events. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe on whichever channel you're listening on. And until the next episode.